Okay. So, welcome everybody on the Facebook page Business and Balance and my group, The Profit Lounge. Today we have a really special guest. This is Kim O'Hara, and she is from A Story Inside. She is a book coach to bestsellers, and we have a special treat today. We have a 25-minute engaging presentation slash class where she's going to share the bigger message in the book. So I will now make her the host and she'll
Yay.
have to take it away. And
So,
if you guys have any questions while you're watching the video, you can always put it in the comments below and we will come back and take a peek at those a little bit later.
that's
Okay. So I just made you the host. How'd
fantastic.
that work?
I'm sure it's going to be amazing. And I'm
Okay.
so happy to be here. And thank you for inviting me. And I love how our conversation started about demystifying this whole fear of writing a book and how a lot of people have, this desire to write a book, but they're scared. And then that blocks them from getting out a bigger message about who they are, about expanding their conversation out in the world. And, up leveling them to a different room. Like when you become a published author or you're writing a book, you are now having different conversations with an up level of people, and that's just the way it is with books. So today I want to talk about the why of the book and how important it is to build the foundation in a book before you just go and regurgitate your whole life story onto the page, and then it's messy and nobody wants to read that. And sort of talk about how you can work through a system to feel comfortable getting naked and vulnerable with who you are and what you've been through and what you've overcome, and share that out in the world as an expert and as a thought leader. And books are fantastic for that, especially right now in COVID. People are confused. They don't know what's going on. So many people say to me all the time, like, things are never going to be the same. We're never going to behave the same way again. And it's like, authors are the people that are going to come forward and say, here's the book on how to behave. Here's the new way to think. Here's the new paradigm of thought in that particular area. And so I'm really excited on where this is going for authors. I'm going to share my screen here, and I will put this on slideshow. Let's see, slideshow, play from start. Okay, and can you see that, Stephanie, okay? Perfect. So the talk is the bigger message in the book, and I called it that because, we do have to drill down and get into what that bigger message is before we steamroll forward. Right now, how-to books are the way to go. It's what's selling out in the marketplace. Is, like I said, people want to know how to function and how to live, and we'll get to that in a minute. Just a quick thing on me. I used to be a movie producer, so I've been telling stories since I was 20 years old. And I became a book coach 6 years ago after I burnt out from the movie business and no longer felt like I was serving my why. And since then, I have helped 35 people reach bestseller status. Currently, my client, who I'm going to get to, Alan Maxwell, #3 on the Wall Street Journal top 10 business books, top 150 USA Today, and #1 in all of nonfiction, in Amazon and in Barnes and Noble. All of my authors tend to up-level their careers by becoming speakers, whether it's TED Talks or bigger stages or, international conferences. And I also started a podcast called You Should Write a Book About That, because that is what people always have said to them all the time when they are deciding whether to write books. They come to me and say, oh my God, if another person tells me I need to write a book, I'm just going to scream. I'm an author, and I have 2 daughters, and I live in Los Angeles, and I have a cat. So there you go about me. So this is a perfect example of a book that I wanted to give and show that where someone who might not necessarily think that they have a book in them per se of this magnitude comes to me. Alan he is a defense contractor in San Diego, and he had a dream to write a bestseller. That was it. He just knew that he had a lifelong journey that he wanted to share. He was 60 years old and he felt like it was time. Like he wasn't getting any younger and he wanted to write this book. And we did about 3 drafts. And about 3 drafts in, I said to him, I love you. You're amazing, but you're not famous. And so memoirs are really important that they have a self-help element in them if you're not famous. So I'm seeing 15 or 20 rules that you've learned from the streets of Philly all the way through the Navy into working for the government that you could implement in the book. And that was the game changer. We came up with these 15 rules of the system, and his book completely rocketed to amazing success. So, it's like you come here and you have a dream and you have a desire to write a book and you feel like you have something to say. You have to take that leap to some degree and then trust that the support will show up around you to create the container and the system in which you can effectively share what your wisdom is with people. And it's not always evident immediately. It sometimes is a long process. What I like to say is, and I think everybody can agree with this about anything they do, we could, I've done talks on this and I've shifted this recently because I used to say, oh, what holds people back from writing books or doing anything that's like a passion project that is time or accountability, or I never can get it on my schedule, or my kids come first, or my business takes too much time. When you want to do something, I find what holds people back the most is they just don't say yes. And it sounds so simple, but that's where you get the most argument. Well, how am I supposed to say yes when all these other things? Well, just say yes, and then everything else will fall into place. And it always does, because the universe is ready to start to get rid of some of the stuff that is clogging up your time to make room for something that can bring you to another level in your life, in your business, emotionally, personally. And I mean, I've worked with trust attorneys. I've worked with, multi-level marketing executives. I've worked with public health executives. I've worked with health professionals. It's no different for anybody. It's just a matter of taking that leap and saying that they're going to do this. So let's get into some of the special sauce here for developing your ideas of a book. And here's the greatest part about this. You can do this for 20 minutes and you can realize you don't want to write a book. Or you could do it for 20 minutes and be like, oh my God, I know exactly why I have to write the book. It's designed that way to really empower the people that are ready to go, that just need that extra nudge to tell their story. So the first thing, and Stephanie, you can do these exercises while I talk about them, and then maybe we can do a little bantering in a little bit about this. And I could use you as a, like a sample coaching situation. Where did I come from that people will relate to? What I often do is I have clients or potential clients or just anyone that comes to me and says, how do I know whether I should write a book? I ask them to spend 10 minutes, just set a timer, and really lean into where did I come from that people relate to. Now, the first reaction is, well, I don't really want to write about my childhood. Like, what does my childhood matter? And it's like, well, I mean, your childhood actually probably reveals a tremendous amount about how you were raised, the values you were given about money, traumas you might have experienced, things you might have witnessed with your parents. We're given these beliefs when we grow up, when we're raised. We see and hear a lot in our childhood, teenage year, and even young adult experiences. Even someone who's 35 or 40, you're shaped by what you experienced in your childhood. And this is a wonderful way to experience that. It doesn't always have to be childhood, though. It could be a certain profession that you were doing, and then maybe you left. something that didn't work out for you, something that you had a tough moment with. And so I just urge people to take a little bit of time and to write about this and find out where it is, because this is creating the unique you. Nobody wants to just write a blanket book that a million other people have written. Those end up as door stoppers, right? Those are those books that you give out at the networking events and someone throws in the trash before they even get to their car at the parking garage. You do not want to write those books. Okay, that's a waste of time. The next question is, why do I do in my profession, what do I do in my profession that is unique and people comment on all the time that's special to me? Um, the trust attorney that's my client, she takes extra care to bring you into the conference room and ask you really meaningful and really deep questions about your family and about your history and about your ex-husband or your ex-wife or about your children. And you realize you haven't actually thought about a healthcare directive. You haven't thought about death. Suddenly you're thinking about death, right? And that's unique. That's something that's unique to her. So you want to look in and see, what is it that I do in my business or in my profession that people always say, when I call you up, you always have a wise word for me. Or I love that you have the perspective from a small town. I was from a small town, and I can relate to that story of yours, right? Maybe it's something they read on a website, or maybe it's something you said at a networking event or a talk. So you really want to look and see what is unique to you. And if it's not in your profession, then chances are this is going to guide you to what we call later in this talk an inciting incident, which is that launch experience that you have that a lot of people wrap their book around. So this is just a broader desire and dream before we drill down even deeper. So the third prompt that I have people write on is really important to get yourself to that place of empowerment. Okay. You've always wanted to write a book and you want to explore the feelings behind stepping up to that place of power, but you're stuck in the why. You're stuck in your ego wants to keep you safe. Your ego's like, we don't need to talk about that stuff. That's irrelevant. We don't need to go to that place because you've been in a box and maybe you've served yourself fairly well in the box and things are going well, but yet at the same time you're uncomfortable. You're like, I know I feel like I'm supposed to go to another level and I don't know how to get there and something's holding me back. This is the process of working that out. I talked to a group last week and people had turned in questionnaires before about how much they write, and the person that was like, I don't like writing, I never write, is probably going to become a client because they're just putting up a barrier. They realized they were putting up a barrier to make it safe. Well, I don't write. And once they realized that they actually love writing, then it started to feel safe. So they had to step up and empower themselves. So you want to look at some of those inner critics. You want to look at who told you you can't be creative? Who told you that you weren't a writer? What are the stakes if you write a book? Really look at some of the stakes that you're setting up for yourself. People set up really big stakes. And some things I suggest to people to do is there someone that you can just say, no, thank you for your opinion to? Just write them a goodbye letter when you're in the process of that book, of deciding whether you want to write that book. It's really empowering. So, Stephanie, what do you think in just blush? And I know that was just a lot of material. You would say that where do you come from that people relate to? And I know some of your story, so I could probably guess.
Right. These are all really good questions. So I'm trying to like write down my notes really quick. But where did I come from that people will relate to? I think having parents that were both teachers in the New York City public school system, and literally no one in my family owned a business ever. my immediate family.
Yeah.
So just being the first one to really own my own business and make it work and sustainable and can take care of me was huge. And I think they were scared of that because I know they had dreams about that, but never really did it.
I love that. That's wonderful because a lot of people can relate to that being the first generation entrepreneur that
Mm-hmm.
came from the 9 to 5. I mean, being a teacher is such a,
Yeah.
an admirable profession, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, it's not entrepreneurism.
Right.
So I think that's amazing. Thank you.
Sure.
So people can hear that and just, understand. And then, so now what you do in your profession, what do people comment on all the time about what you do?
I get a lot that I'm easy to open up to and that I just like she just gets it. I hear that a lot. And that I'm a good listener and I ask a lot of like questions that might sound repetitive or like nosy, but it's really just being curious with how people think because that's how they're getting their results. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
And I wonder if growing up, were your parents, like as teachers, really curious? I mean, they have to ask a lot of questions, right?
Yeah, they were curious about like book stuff, but I don't think about like, you know, like psychology or the human condition or like what we now know as life coaching. It wasn't really about that. It was like there's one way to do it, and you get a job and you get a pension and you get health care and this is like the most important.
Yes.
So,
Interesting. Well, I think that's wise to know that about yourself.
mm-hmm,
And other people that are watching can take that and use that as an example. So thank you for that.
mm-hmm,
So what the other piece is that first time authors jump over all the time is the reader avatar. And they forget to really sink in to who they're writing for. And one of the biggest mistakes is they think they're writing for everybody. I can't tell you how many times I've said to people, well, who's your audience? Like, what's the age? And like, oh, 25 to like 70. And I'm like, how can you possibly appeal to people from 25 to 70? I'm not, I mean, maybe like, let's go for that someday, if you want to write like To Kill a Mockingbird, but it's, it's grounding in the beginning to who your champion audience is. You have to find a champion audience who then rises you up and exposes you to the rest of the world. You need cheerleaders. And the best way to get cheerleaders is to really drill down that age group. I mean, I'm talking 38-year-olds, 38 to 45, 45 to 52, and really understand what goes on that you've seen in that span of years in your personal experience and also the people that you want to write to. There is a book called The Mad Woman in the Volvo by Sandra Lowe, and she's a hysterical um, writer who talks about the craziness of menopause. And until someone gave me that book, I thought it was the only one behaving in that way. She's hysterical. And someone gave me that book, and it's like literally for someone who's like just turned 50. It's like that, just that moment where you're like, this is gonna change. Oh no. Not so much for people that are 57 who have like they've got it already. Like they're in it now. Like they understand, right? So it's being really specific. Gender, we write differently for men than we write for women. And if you want to write a book for both genders, it takes a, a very skilled writer to do that. Um, so I always suggest to people that are writing their first book to pick one gender. And then if they have more masculine energy as just a woman in general, a woman writer, then it might skew over, but I would definitely write for one gender. You want to know what keeps them up at night, and you want to have that in your mind all the time because that is what keeps the pages turning. They want you to keep giving them solution till the very, very end. And we're going to go through how you map that out, but it's like you've got to keep that top of mind all the time. Writers tend to be like, well, I established it in the first 2 chapters and now I'm going to go off and just tell all these stories and have all these like great philosophies, and the reader feels like you kind of dumped them. So you want to always keep that in mind. What they seek to learn from you also has to be reiterated. And there's all different beautiful ways of doing that in memoir and self-help and how to, and blend books that are nonfiction with some memoir in them. There's so many different ways to roll that out. It's a really exciting time in the book market because we've entered a space where lines are blurred a little bit and people are doing a lot of hybrid books. So there's a lot more ways to accomplish that depending on your voice and who you are. So I'm just going to cruise through that so we can get to the other part of this. So the inciting incident is it's kind of everything. It's kind of everything in the book. It's that moment that people talk about when they tell someone about your book. They're like, oh, there was this scene and I can't forget it. And it's like when I knew this writer was writing this book for me. And the inciting incident is not always like the divorce or the trauma or the operation or, the fight. It's sometimes the moment before. It's sometimes the moment after. It's sometimes some innocuous event that happened in a pharmacy 2 weeks prior. It's that deepening and that heart moment where something changes. It's a catalyst, right? And it's driving that why forward. So now we're getting really specific on that relatability, and we're getting really specific on what makes you special and unique, because now you're going to expose a part of your story and a part of who you are. And this is something that people tend to take from their book, The Inciting Incident, and they tend to put it into a signature speech, or they tend to make it part of like a elevator talk. They cut up pieces of it so you can take your book and you can really use this moment to go out. It's usually at the back of the book cover, The Inciting Incident. Also, inciting incidents can be repetitive, like stories my mother told me, or I moved many times, or I had 10 boyfriends. These are ways that authors can break up the evolution of their book. Barbara Corcoran she's a great example of this. She did this book called Shark Tales, and it was handed to me, and I was like, I don't even know her. I don't watch Shark Tales. She's not even my age demographic. And I just loved this book. It was like such a fast read. And I'd say one of her inciting incidences is she's dumped by her boyfriend, who's her real estate business partner, because he's having an affair with the secretary. And it's like the most demoralizing, horrifying experience ever. But then she quickly realizes it's freedom. Like, it's the kick she needs. She doesn't need him. She can go off and launch this multi-million, and she does. But throughout the whole book, there's all these other inciting incidences that are remembering growing up when she was with her 9 siblings and the advice that her mother always gave her and how she used that in business. So this, simple book that maybe it's a best-selling book. So obviously a lot of people connected with, the way that she rolled that out. I'm just doing a time check. I haven't, how are we doing with time? Because turn my phone off so people won't call us in the middle of this.
We are almost at 20 minutes, so we could
Okay.
do whatever you need to do
Yep.
to. It's
Kind of
awesome.
get through go through the end of this. So the inciting incident is the why of the story, but it's the drilling down, right? So people can accept the why if they have the same issue, but then you go to the next level and you tell the story that makes your book unique. So then I ask people to do book themes, and a book theme is the main idea of the book, and it's conveyed using, characters and settings and dialogue and basically all the elements of storytelling. And I ask people to be very specific as possible with their themes and not go broad. And the reason why is that's where the gems lie in your book. If someone says, I want to write a book about love, it's like, well, is that, love after divorce? Is that single mom love? Is that, you know, um, same gender love? Like, get really, really specific. I want to write about depression. Well, is that depression after losing a parent? Is that depression without using medicine? Like, what is that? And I just want to give Naomi, who's a client of mine, a spotlight here because she was writing a book with me, and her book was about binge eating. And her special sauce was the binge eating that she does and then the sprinting afterwards. So it was like she would binge eat and then she'd get really, really busy and really successful and then binge eat again. So it was like this self-sabotaging cycle. But as she was writing the book with me, she kept bringing up being an Orthodox Jew and the food and the Shabbat and all the, like, Jewish holidays and the challahs and the thing. And I said, you should make being an Orthodox Jew and religion a theme in the book as well. And it was like a whole rewrite. Now she's out with major traditional publishers or reviewing her book. And so it's really exciting. So what you want to do is you want to write down 5 themes that you think your book's about. And then you're going to write down 20 moments, and then you're going to connect them. And if they don't connect, you're going to kill them. Like I say here, you're going to dump the dogs. So if anything that doesn't connect, it needs to go, because I'm going to tell you it's going to end up on the editing floor anyway, and it's going to cost you time and money. So here's how, you can know me a little more about me and listen to my podcast. I talk to writers on my podcast. Some are my clients. You can hear about how I've worked with them. Some people just have amazing stories and may or may not write a book. And we are just starting on Tuesday. I'm not sure when this is posting, but it'll be on all the episodes coming forward. A mid-roll offer for 5 ways to get naked with your story. And I'll give here the link to go get that. It's a great download. It's really comprehensive. It's different material than what I gave today. And then also, if anybody is interested in writing a book, there's my calendar link, if that's something that they want to do. And I believe that is the end. Do you have any questions after all that? I'm sorry, that was a lot. I
Yeah,
realize you gotta burn through that,
that
but
was awesome. I was like, people are definitely going to watch this more than once, but I was right before the last one when you're doing book theme and you said write 5 themes and 20 moments. Do you like 20 inciting incidents, or like how do you, and then how do you connect those?
right. So there's your inciting incident, which is your centerpiece
Mm-hmm.
experience, right? That happens. The 20 other elements that happen in your book are all going to kind of be based on the why and the
Okay.
pain points and everything you're kind of leading your reader avatar to.
Okay.
So if something is not related to all that based on the themes that come from the inciting incident is really a centerpiece experience, but the bulk of the book, the outlining of the book, is going to come from those 20 moments and those
Mm-hmm.
5 themes. And so you
Okay.
want to connect those. So it's like kind of a big soup, but eventually all the pieces, what doesn't fit is going to stand out, because you see people trying to put the whole kitchen sink into books. And to be
Mm-hmm.
honest with you, I'm being generous by saying 5. By the time you come work with me, I have it down to 3, because
Okay.
5 is too many.
Right. Okay. And then on when you were talking about the reader avatar and how most people skip over it, how do you tell your clients like the meeting points or the push and pull between the book you think you want to write or need to get out versus what the public is actually interested in and will buy? Because
Mhm.
isn't that the point too? to have sales.
You want people to feel like you've written the book for them
Right.
and not for your therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Often the first draft is kind of therapeutic, though. Is
Okay.
really not. I really urge people in the very beginning to know who their avatar is, try and cater things around their avatar, keep them in mind. But if something comes up that you really feel you want to write about, it feels like this is for my avatar, it feels really important that they know this about me. I always say, write it, and then we can edit it at the end. Like, we can
Okay.
kill it if we need to. And a lot of material from first drafts end up being removed in the second draft or moved around in a different way. So it's knowing who your avatar is, but also being willing to make some exploration with your story.
Okay. And then what would you say to somebody who's maybe 2 or 3 steps behind saying, okay, I know I want to write a book, who maybe is scared to write or put something on paper? What would you tell them, like 3 things to think about or to do to get focused on
That's a difficult question
this?
because I come from the camp of you just go for it
Okay.
and trust that you will be guided in the right direction with writing. I don't believe those people actually are ready to write a book. I feel like
Hmm.
you're either ready to write a book or you're not ready to write a book. And I think where people get into trouble, and this is what I'll say, is that they think, well, I'm just going to take like a writing class, or I'm going to do like a deep dive weekend. I have so many of those people come to me and they'll be like, I don't understand. I took all these classes and I still haven't written my book. And I'm like, because it's not a system.
Mm-hmm.
Those people never told you they were going to take you through a 12-step system to get through your book. You just said you wanted to learn how to write. If you want to become a better writer, take writing classes.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to write a book, sign up in a system with a book coach.
Okay. And I have a few more questions. Is that all right?
Yes, I
Because
love
I
it.
think it's so interesting. Okay. So, what is the actual timeline of people who say to you, I'm ready to go, let's sign up, and they agree? What can they expect for the cycle? I know you mentioned 12 steps, but what is the time cycle and the time commitment that the person should have?
It's 6 to 8 months to
Okay.
write 3 drafts of a book,
3 drafts. Okay.
which is pretty close to cleanly done. I
Hmm.
mean, the book is realized. After that, you tend to need someone to read it and do like a final edit for you. That's when you kind of let go of it and you just go, I've futzed with it long enough. I'm going to let someone else take a quick read of this and do some revamping on it.
Hmm.
Um, or a year. And the year is after the 8 month mark, once the book is realized. I tend to walk people through finding a PR person, finding a marketing person, finding a social media person, finding someone that's going to help them talk, finding a self publisher, going after publishing, traditional publishing. I'll walk people through that if they want that service.
Okay. And you also mentioned the benefits of having the book is not only just to have it and sell it, but to use it as a signature speech or, on the jacket or website material. What are some other ways that you've seen clients kind of leverage that to their benefit?
Oh, that's a really good question. My client, Nicole, who wrote this book that is about being in the public health department, she ended up going out and being able to go to a lot of the public officials she knows
Mhm.
and ask them to write forwards for the book and go to a lot of the commissions that she knows. And so it's actually a way to revitalize your community on a different level, right? So
Mm.
we have another opportunity to go back and re-network with people that we might not have asked for their inclusion in our lives in a different way, right? So you might have gone to someone
Mhm.
and asked for them to be a client, or asked for them for a job, or asked for them something. Now you're going and saying, hey, I have a book. I want you to write a foreword, or I want you to do an introduction for this book. You can create online classes from the book, which is something that is realized from creating the actual material in the book. It's all there for you. Now you
Mm.
have everything you need. You've done all the mapping out. And you can start to get reactions from people too on what they like about the book. And that helps you to build some of those programs. I've also just seen people, and it's kind of the most woo woo part, but just their whole lives radically change, because no longer is their story, and this is why I've called my company A Story Inside. It's no longer inside them. It's now starting communities and conversations with other people who've been scared of writing about that particular area of their lives, or haven't had the courage. So it just depends. And podcasts, I should
Mhm.
add that in. When I was at Podfest, they were saying podcasts and books are really becoming like a package deal for people.
Mm.
Write a book and then you have a podcast. You could also make books out of your podcast too, which is kind of
Mm.
interesting too.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Show notes.
So for your podcast, you should write a book about that. Tell me one or two people that you've met that you've had on that were your craziest stories, or that you think were the most, wow factor.
Well, Allison Andrews had this insane story. I met her on LinkedIn. I literally just reached out to her on LinkedIn because I just was like, oh, she's like runs Fashion Week in San Diego. She seems cool. Like, I mean, it was literally like, she seems like a woman I want to know. And then when I got to know her and I found out what she went through with her son, who had this flesh eating disease on his belly button and almost
Mm.
died, and that she spent all this time in the hospital and had these spiritual awakenings that made her realize she had to get divorced and change her whole life. I was like, you have to be on the show. I hadn't even gotten to you should write a book about that yet. I was so blown away. Like, we hadn't even gotten there. And in the middle of the show, when I say to her, you should write a book about that, she was like, yep, we're going to do that. We're going to sign the contract
Mhm.
right when we up. And she did.
Wow, that's awesome.
So that's what I'm talking about. People that are ready.
Mhm.
They're ready. They're ready, and then the teacher comes.
Mhm.
Something prompted me to be, I wouldn't say I was pushy with her, but something got me to kind of keep on with her,
Right.
where I think we meet a lot of people on LinkedIn and Facebook, and it would be nice if we could connect with everyone, but it's hard, but
Mhm.
certain people definitely stand out. I have an interview that's coming out on election day.
Mhm.
I'm super excited about it. And we purposely did this interview with a comedian, Carrie Pomerelli, because we
Mhm.
think people are going to need to laugh on election day.
Oh my gosh.
And she is funny, and
Uh,
she's Christian, which
right.
I'm not. So, but it's like funny, and like she's just a single mom trying to do her thing in COVID, like where all of her gigs dried up. So
Mm.
it's like it's so I would say that is going to be a really powerful interview. And there's been some amazing, I've had just amazing, each one is so like layered and textured. I have a coach myself,
Mhm.
and she walks me through writing, and her mom is Jackie Collins.
Mm.
And so that interview about her mom and how she lived under the shadow of her mom and loved her
Mm.
mom, that's an
Wow.
incredible interview.
Awesome. Okay, last question. Clients that you like to work with who you think are a good fit for you, what like top 3 traits or characteristics, like when they come to the table with you, you're like, they're going to write a great book.
They're
What's that?
scared, but they have a powerful energy.
Okay.
Like, they're confident. They're like,
Mhm.
I know that this is something I need to do, but I'm scared. And I know that you know exactly what to do. So I'm going to let you hold the space for me and get me there. And I'm just going to focus on telling the story and being
Mhm.
vulnerable. Those are the conversations that are just, there's no doubt about it. Um, what was the question? Was characteristics?
Or traits. Give me two more that you know when somebody comes in front of you or is on your, radar that that's going to be an amazing client.
It's been 20 years and they've been thinking about writing their book, and now they are in a life change. They might have become a grandparent and now they're retired and they're not working with their kids. They just have grandkids and they have this space and time, and they
Mm-hmm.
finally want to give time for them.
Okay.
That's a big client. And clients who are supported, it's interesting, supported by their spouses for
Mm-hmm.
this journey. That's really important. I had a client, actually Naomi,
Mm-hmm.
who met me through a text message from someone she was on vacation with, another client of mine, and she was like, we're doing this, and sent me a video of her and her husband. She's like, he said yes. She sent me a video, and I was like, that is the cutest, because it's important to have that like emotional support if
Right.
you have a partner.
Yes. Because you're
Sure.
being vulnerable also. You're telling your story to the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. This was great. Very helpful and fun. And anybody could do this and walk through these steps and get clearer on what the message is for their book
Mm-hmm.
and how to take it further. So
Yes.
thank you so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you for having
it.
me.
And
It's
we'll,
fun.
yeah, and we'll put the links to your website and your calendar in the post for this if anyone has any questions. And then you could also write them in the comments and we will come back in and take a peek at them. But thanks for joining us.
And don't anyone think that any question's silly.
Mm,
I think that one thing that we want to say is that um, I think we want to try and say, don't ask a lot of questions in this particular talk about publishing, because this talk
okay.
is more specifically about, a lot of people like to jump ahead and be like, well, what do I do if I can't get a publisher? This is more about taking the leap and deciding to write the book. All that other stuff is decided later. So it's more about the risk, the fear, the stepping in, the vulnerability, all that is where I think we should focus.
Okay. Perfect. So no publishing questions, anybody. It doesn't matter. You'll get published after. You got to do the work first and you got
Gotta
to
do the
commit.
work. That's right.
All right. Okay. Thank you. I'm
Thank
going to
you.